Late one October night, a man named Daniel received a phone call that shouldn't have been possible. The caller ID showed a number he hadn't seen in years, his wife's. But here's the thing. She had been dead for almost 3 months. At first, he thought it was a cruel prank. Maybe a glitch. But when he answered, the voice on the other end wasn't a stranger's. It was her voice. Trembling, distant, layered with static, whispering words that froze him in place. Don't let them find it. That single sentence unraveled everything Daniel thought he knew about life, death, and the fragile space in between. What followed wasn't just a mystery. It became one of the most documented and disturbing cases of a post-mortem communication ever recorded. One that still defies explanation today. And tonight, we're going to uncover it. Chapter 1: The Night the Phone Rang. It was just past midnight when Daniel's phone started to ring. At first, he didn't think much of it. The faint buzz on his nightstand blended with the hum of the ceiling fan, a familiar background noise that didn't feel urgent, until he saw the name flashing on the screen. For a few seconds, he froze, just staring. His brain couldn't reconcile what his eyes were seeing. The name wasn't just familiar, it was sacred. It belonged to his wife. The same wife whose funeral he'd attended 3 months ago. He blinked, convinced it was some cruel software glitch, maybe an old text syncing from the cloud. But the ringtone persisted. Steady. Real. With a trembling hand, he answered. At first, there was only static, a low, rhythmic hiss, like wind brushing over a microphone. Then came a faint breath. A woman's voice. Her voice. Half in disbelief, half in hope. Don't let them find it. The line went dead. For a long time, Daniel sat in silence, the phone still pressed against his ear, his pulse pounding louder than the rain outside. He didn't know it yet, but that single call had already changed everything. Chapter 2: A Voice from the Static. Daniel replayed the voicemail at least a dozen times that night. Each time, the same faint whisper echoed through the static, fragile, almost pleading. Don't let them find it. But every time he listened, he noticed something else. Behind her voice, buried deep under the hiss, there were other sounds. Rhythmic clicks, distant murmurs, almost like breathing. Not hers, someone else's. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking, the room dim except for the pale glow of his phone screen. He checked the call log again. The timestamp was correct. The number matched hers perfectly. No spoofing, no private ID, no anomalies. Just Emma. That couldn't be possible. Her number had been disconnected weeks ago. He'd even kept the old phone sealed away in a drawer, unable to bring himself to delete her contact. He called back. Once, twice, nothing. Just silence. Then, a minute later, his phone vibrated. Not a call this time, but a notification. One new voicemail. His breath hitched as he pressed play. There was static again, a faint thump, and then a soft, almost inaudible phrase that made his heart stop cold. Chapter 3: The Woman Who Was Gone. Before that night, Daniel's life had already unraveled once. Emma wasn't just his wife. She was his balance. The kind of person who filled silence with warmth, who believed that even bad days had a purpose. They'd met during a thunderstorm, fittingly, when Daniel's car broke down and she offered him her umbrella. She used to joke that lightning brought them together. But lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. 3 months earlier, a car accident took her life instantly. A drunk driver ran a red light. No time to brake. No chance to say goodbye. For Daniel, everything that followed blurred into endless condolences, empty casseroles, and the suffocating quiet of a house that once felt alive. He'd spent weeks unable to enter her studio, the small sunlit room where she painted. Her unfinished canvas still stood there, a smear of blue sky she never completed. Sometimes he'd imagine she just stepped out for a moment, brush still damp with color. When the call came, that illusion shattered. It wasn't closure returning. It was Emma, reaching across the divide he thought was unbreakable. But why now? And what did she mean, don't let them find it? The question clawed at his thoughts. Because whatever it was, Emma had died protecting it. Chapter 4: Ghost in the Wires. The next morning, Daniel tried to make sense of it. He brewed coffee he didn't drink, scrolled through message boards, and searched everything from phantom phone calls to posthumous number spoofing. He needed logic, something solid to hold on to. The explanations he found were mundane, almost comforting. Phone company errors, recycled numbers, electromagnetic interference. But none fit. His wife's number had been deactivated, not reassigned. And the voice, it wasn't some AI prank or random recording. It was her. He would have recognized that trembling tone anywhere, the one she used when she was scared but trying to sound brave. Desperate for proof, he plugged his phone into his laptop and exported the audio file. As the waveform appeared, he noticed something strange. The static wasn't random, it pulsed in intervals like a heartbeat. He replayed the clip with headphones, isolating frequencies. Somewhere between the high hum and low distortion, there was a faint whisper. A second voice. Male. Unintelligible. He didn't tell anyone. Who would believe him? That night, he unplugged every device, turned off the Wi-Fi, and left his phone face down. But at 3:12 a.m., the screen lit up again. Unknown number. Chapter 5, The Message That Didn't Belong. By morning, Daniel was done pretending this was a coincidence. He needed proof. Something tangible that couldn't be dismissed as a trick of grief or sleep deprivation. So, he took his phone to a friend, Lena, a sound engineer who'd worked on audio restoration for police archives. She listened quietly as he played the voicemail through her studio monitors. The static filled the room like a heavy fog, swallowing the silence between them. When Emma's voice came through, Lena froze. Don't let them find it. After a moment, she leaned closer, frowning. Daniel. There's another layer under her voice. She isolated the background noise, and that's when they both heard it. A low rhythmic sound. Not electrical hum. Not feedback. Footsteps. But it wasn't just footsteps. When slowed down, they revealed a faint mechanical echo, like someone walking inside a metallic hallway, followed by a single, sharp thud. Lena's equipment confirmed something else too. The voicemail wasn't recorded on his network. It didn't pass through any tower logs. In short, it didn't exist. It's not possible, she said. There's no metadata. It's like it came from nowhere. Daniel leaned back, cold creeping into his chest. Maybe nowhere was exactly the point, because that's where Emma was calling from. Chapter 6. Investigating the Impossible. Almost equals 240 words. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who believed in ghosts. He believed in receipts, data, the kind of evidence you could print and highlight. But when technology failed to explain what he'd heard, he turned to the only place that still might, the paranormal community. He found Dr. Marcus Hale, a researcher known for studying instrumental transcommunication, or ITC, the theory that voices from beyond can reach us through electronic devices. Hale had spent years capturing unexplained transmissions through static, old radios, even cassette recorders. When Daniel shared the voicemail, Hale's reaction was immediate. This isn't interference, he said, adjusting his headphones. This is structured. Someone or something is trying to speak through noise. He ran the audio through a spectrogram, a visual map of sound frequencies. Amid the chaos of static, a distinct pattern emerged, 3 repeating tones, like an electronic signature. It was too deliberate to be random. Do you see that? Hale pointed. Every time she says something, the pattern flares. It's almost like the energy around her voice increases. Daniel felt the air tighten. What does it mean? Hale paused. It means she's not just leaving a message. He looked up, eyes narrowing. She's responding to you. The line between science and haunting had just been crossed. Chapter 7, The Recording Session. Dr. Hale invited Daniel to his lab. A cluttered room lined with old recording gear, radio scanners, and tangled cords that hummed faintly like a living thing. It smelled of dust, metal, and coffee gone cold. This is where we listen, Hale said, flipping a row of switches. But tonight, we're not just listening, we're inviting. He set Daniel's phone on the table, next to a reel-to-reel recorder and a small EMF sensor that blinked in slow, steady pulses. The lights dimmed to a dull amber glow. Speak naturally, Hale instructed. Ask her to talk to you again. Daniel hesitated. Then softly, Emma, if you can hear me, I'm here. Please, tell me what you meant. For a long moment, there was nothing. Just the slow tick of the clock and the whisper of magnetic tape. Then the EMF reader flickered once, twice, and the reel spun faster. A burst of static erupted through the speakers. Buried inside it was a voice. Not a whisper this time, a sharp, desperate gasp. They're close. Hale froze, his eyes locked on the sound meters. The recording was still running, but now another layer had joined it. Faint breathing, uneven, growing louder. Then, with a jolt, every device in the room shut off. Total silence. Hale exhaled. She's not gone, he said quietly. She's trying to warn you. Chapter 8, A Pattern in the Noise. The next day, Hale analyzed the recording frame by frame, dissecting every fragment of sound like a surgeon working under candlelight. Daniel sat nearby, sleepless and hollow-eyed, clutching the same phone that had started it all. Through advanced frequency filters, the static began to separate, no longer a wall of sound but layers of intent. Underneath Emma's voice, Hale found repeating pulses, 3 short, 1 long, over and over. Morse code, Daniel asked. Hale shook his head. Too irregular. But the rhythm isn't random. He ran a cross-spectrum analysis, comparing the pulses to known audio signatures, earthquakes, power surges, even heartbeat monitors. Nothing matched. Yet every flare in the pattern coincided precisely with Emma's words. It's as if the static reacts emotionally, Hale murmured. Like her voice carries energy that changes the signal itself. Then something stranger emerged. The pulses, when converted into waveform spacing, formed coordinates. Latitude, longitude. Hale entered them into a map. A single point blinked onto the screen. A wooded area 20 miles north of Daniel's home. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Do you know that place? Hale asked. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, Emma used to paint there. The old quarry. The static wasn't just sound anymore. It was a trail leading somewhere she wanted him to find. Chapter 9, The Unopened Box. Daniel hadn't been to Emma's art studio since the funeral. The door had stayed closed, like a wound that refused to heal. But after seeing those coordinates, something told him the answer wasn't out in the woods. Not yet. It was here, in the last place she'd lived and breathed. Dust motes floated through the half-light as he stepped inside. Her brushes still sat in a jar. The paint on the palette hardened like brittle glass. On the easel, that unfinished canvas, the one she'd been working on before the accident, still waited, a smear of blue and white that looked almost like a storm. He searched quietly, methodically, until he noticed a wooden box tucked behind a stack of canvases. Small, hand-carved, with a tiny brass lock. He'd seen it before, Emma's keepsake box. She never let anyone open it. A tremor passed through him as he fetched a screwdriver and forced the latch. The lid creaked open, releasing a faint smell of turpentine and old paper. Inside were photos, ticket stubs, a folded note, and a small digital recorder. Its battery was corroded, but when he replaced it and pressed play, a familiar voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, Daniel, they found me. He froze, because that message was recorded the night she died. Chapter 10, The Hidden Letter. Daniel could barely breathe as Emma's voice filled the room. The recording crackled, every word trembling between warning and confession. They found me. I tried to hide it, but I don't think I have much time. If something happens, don't let them take it. Promise me. Then the sound warped. A sharp thump, a gasp and silence. His hands shook as he turned the recorder over, searching for clues. Etched into the back, barely visible beneath the wear, were 3 numbers. 10.417, the same coordinates Hale had mapped. Beneath the recorder, folded carefully, was a letter. Its paper yellowed and faintly stained with blue paint. The handwriting was hers. Daniel, if you ever open this, I'm sorry. There are things I couldn't tell you, not because I didn't trust you, but because they were bigger than both of us. If you go to the quarry, you'll understand. Please, be careful who you trust. The letter ended abruptly, mid-sentence. as if she'd been interrupted. Daniel stared at the words, the room suddenly colder, heavier. The air itself seemed to hum with quiet electricity. If Emma's warning was real, then her death hadn't been an accident. And whatever it was, the thing she'd hidden, it was still out there, waiting in the shadows of that quarry. Chapter 11 Echoes from Nowhere. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt alive, every flicker of light a signal. By 3 a.m., he gave up trying. The letter sat on the table beside him, illuminated by the pale glow of his phone. On impulse, he pressed record on a voice memo app and asked the air, "Emma, are you here?" First, only silence. Then, faintly, a pop, a crackle like a bad radio frequency slipping through. And just before the file ended, a whisper. "Leave." He jumped, replaying the clip again and again. Each time, the whisper grew sharper, angrier. "Leave." Moments later, the lamp beside him flickered. Once, twice, then burst with a sharp crack. The room plunged into darkness. His heart pounded as the air grew heavy, charged, almost metallic. From the hallway came a low hum. Not mechanical, not natural, a vibration that seemed to pass through him instead of around him. Daniel grabbed his phone. Its screen glitched, pixels dancing before a single line of text appeared across it. "You shouldn't have opened the box." The message vanished as quickly as it appeared. He stumbled backward, heart racing. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. Chapter 12 Science steps in. By morning, Daniel drove straight to Dr. Hale's lab, eyes sunken, voice shaking. He played the new recording, the whisper that said "leave," and showed Hale the phone's glitch log. Hale listened in silence, the hum of his computers filling the air. "This isn't random," he muttered. "This is what we call a direct response phenomenon, the environment reacting to human inquiry." Daniel frowned. "You mean, it's answering?" Hale hesitated. "Maybe. Or it's mimicking what you expect to hear." He brought in a colleague, Dr. Lin, an acoustic physicist, to test the files under controlled conditions. They analyzed signal decay, spectral density, and even electromagnetic flux around Daniel's house. The results were baffling. At several points during the recordings, the sound frequencies spiked beyond the normal human vocal range, into bands usually associated with radio transmissions or lightning. "These readings shouldn't exist indoors," Lynn said quietly. "It's like someone's broadcasting through your environment." They tried replicating it, same equipment, same setup, nothing. The air remained still. Finally, Hale leaned back. "If this is real, Daniel, you're not just getting messages. You're inside some kind of loop." Daniel's voice cracked. "A loop?" Hale nodded. "Something wants your attention, and it knows how to reach you." Chapter 13 The Voice Analysis. Hale's lab turned into an evidence room. Spectrograms lined the monitors, each one showing peaks and valleys of sound. Every whisper, every flicker of static recorded, cataloged, dissected. When Hale ran the waveform comparison, the result made the air seem to thicken. He looked at Daniel. "You might want to sit down." Across the screen, two audio patterns glowed side by side. One from a voicemail Emma had left months before her death, the other from the recent recording. They matched. 98% vocal alignment. "It's her," Daniel whispered. "Statistically," Hale said, "there's almost no chance of that match being coincidence." The spectrogram showed something else too, harmonic layering. Emma's voice wasn't a single tone. It carried overlapping frequencies, as if multiple versions of her voice were speaking in unison. Some higher, some distorted, all repeating the same rhythm. 3 short bursts, 1 long. Hale zoomed in on the waveform. "See that?" he said. "There's an echo beneath her main voice. It's not reflection. It's simultaneous speech." Daniel leaned closer. The lower tone beneath Emma's words wasn't her at all. It was male, faint, rasping, repeating her phrases half a second late, like an echo with intent. And when Hale amplified it, the voice said one unmistakable word. Chapter 14 The Other Calls. Word of Daniel's recordings began to spread. Hale shared a redacted version of the audio with a few trusted colleagues, researchers in Germany, Japan, and the US just to compare anomalies. Within days, messages started pouring in. One came from a man in Poland who claimed his late mother had called him 6 months after her burial. Same pattern of static, same voice distortion. Another message arrived from a radio technician in rural Ohio who'd intercepted what sounded like human speech bleeding through an unused emergency frequency. The signal repeated the same phrase over and over. "Can you hear me now?" At first, Daniel thought it was coincidence. Then Hale mapped the timestamps. Every call from the dead, reported across continents, happened within the same 72-hour windows, each aligning with electromagnetic spikes in Earth's atmosphere. "This isn't isolated," Hale said quietly. "Something's amplifying these transmissions." Daniel scrolled through emails filled with grief and disbelief. People who'd heard voices of loved ones through speakers, baby monitors, even old televisions. And every one of them described the same final sound before the line went dead. A faint, metallic click. Daniel's stomach turned. He'd heard that sound too. Whatever Emma had warned him about. It wasn't just personal anymore. Chapter 15, The History of Spirit Communication. Dr. Hale wasn't surprised that the phenomenon wasn't new. In fact, he'd been waiting for it to resurface. He pulled a worn binder from his shelf and opened to a section marked Early EVP, 1901 to 1978. Inside were yellowed pages of newspaper clippings, radio transcripts, and strange handwritten notes from researchers long forgotten. He began with Fredrik Jurgensen, a Swedish filmmaker from the 1950s who accidentally recorded ghostly voices while taping birdsong. The voices spoke names, answered questions, even predicted events. Then came Dr. Konstantin Radev, who catalogued over 70,000 such voices, the first to call them electronic voice phenomena. Even earlier, in the late 1800s, Thomas Edison himself had theorized about a spirit telephone. He believed that if consciousness survived death, it might still interact with electrical currents, that technology could one day tune into the human soul like a radio station. Daniel listened, stunned. The idea sounded absurd, yet somehow too consistent to ignore. These people were laughed at, Hale said, closing the binder. But they were documenting the same patterns we're seeing now. Static, direct responses, emotional tone. He looked at Daniel. Only difference is, they needed recorders and radios. Daniel frowned. And now, Hale leaned back. Now we all carry one in our pockets. Chapter 16, When Technology Meets the Afterlife. Dr. Hale's words lingered in Daniel's mind. Now we all carry one in our pockets. Phones, Wi-Fi routers, smart speakers, billions of devices transmitting signals through invisible waves every second. The air itself had become a web of frequencies, a global nervous system buzzing nonstop. What if, Hale mused, that web is thin enough for something else to slip through? He explained how digital compression, the process that reduces sound into data, sometimes produces phantom harmonics, stray tones that appear in files with no logical source. But what if those distortions weren't errors? What if they were responses? Daniel thought back to Emma's call. The static, the layered voices, the mechanical echoes, all transmitted through a medium designed to carry human emotion across distance. Maybe technology hadn't created the phenomenon. Maybe it had invited it. Around the same time, Hale's servers started receiving corrupted packets during their audio uploads, tiny data fragments carrying short bursts of noise identical to Emma's waveform pattern. No one was calling, yet the signals were arriving. Something's using our network, Hale said, staring at the data stream. Not like a hacker, more like a frequency trying to hold itself together. Daniel's phone buzzed. A single new voicemail appeared, time-stamped 5 minutes in the future. Chapter 17, Daniel's Decline. Sleep became a stranger. Every night, Daniel would lie awake, the phone on his nightstand glowing faintly, as if waiting. Sometimes, he swore he heard faint whispers under the hum of his charger, words buried beneath the electricity. He stopped answering unknown numbers, but that didn't help. The calls no longer came from anywhere, no number, no origin. Just silence, then static, then Emma's voice, fading in and out like a broken radio broadcast. He tried destroying the phone once. smashed it in the driveway. But the next morning, a brand new device arrived in a plain box at his doorstep. Inside was a note. "You dropped this." His friends noticed the change first. Hollow eyes, nervous laughter, constant checking of shadows. He'd start mid-conversation, looking over someone's shoulder as if hearing something they couldn't. When Hale visited, he found the walls covered in scribbles, timestamps, waveform shapes, and one repeated phrase written over and over. "The line is never dead." Hale knew Daniel was close to breaking, but part of him couldn't stop. The more they uncovered, the deeper the mystery grew. And Daniel? He wasn't sure whether Emma was reaching out for help or trying to pull him somewhere she already was. Chapter 18: The Hidden Frequency. Hale returned to his lab, exhausted but obsessed. He loaded the latest voicemail from Daniel into his spectrum analyzer, breaking it down into raw frequencies, the unseen DNA of sound. Most of the audio was noise, static, and electromagnetic interference. But buried deep at 19.47 kilohertz, he found something eerie, a pulse. Faint, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like breathing. He ran it through multiple filters. Each time, the same pattern repeated: 3 short pulses, a pause, then 1 long. It didn't match any known carrier signal, but when he mapped it visually, the waveform looked organic. And then he noticed something impossible. The pulse wasn't just in Emma's call. It appeared in every single EVP recording ever made, from Jurgensen's birdsong tapes to modern smartphone captures. It was a global signature, one that transcended time, device, and geography. When Hale overlaid the pulse from Daniel's latest recording, the 2 signals aligned perfectly. Whatever was calling Daniel wasn't random. It was part of a pattern, an ancient frequency that had been whispering through human technology since the first voice was ever recorded. He leaned back in disbelief. "It's not the dead trying to reach us," he whispered. "It's something that's always been here, waiting for us to listen." Chapter 19: The Signal Awakens. The discovery of the hidden frequency should have been a breakthrough, but instead, it triggered something neither of them could explain. The night Hale identified the pulse, every electronic device in his lab came to life. Monitors flickered. Printers spat out blank pages. Even the motion sensors, the ones designed to detect heat signatures, began tracking invisible movement across the room. Daniel called in a panic. His apartment lights were flickering in sync with the same rhythmic pulse Hale had recorded. Every few seconds, 3 flashes, a pause, 1 long. He unplugged everything, but the pattern kept repeating, as if the frequency had moved beyond wires and signals and was now inside the air itself. When Hale turned on his oscilloscope, the waveform was still there, shifting, reacting to their voices. "Say something," he told Daniel over the line. "Emma," Daniel whispered. The waveform spiked. For a moment, the static on both ends deepened, and through the distortion came a sound that made Hale's blood run cold. A chorus of overlapping breaths, layered, human, but not quite alive. Then, from the speaker, a faint voice whispered, not Emma's, but something older, rougher. Chapter 20: The Government Files. The blackout didn't just kill their equipment, it erased their data. Every file related to the recordings was wiped clean. No backups, no recovery logs, nothing. Hale knew that kind of precision wasn't random. Someone or something didn't want them looking deeper. 2 days later, he got an encrypted email from an anonymous source claiming to have seen this before. The file attached was labeled Project Echo, classified/1983. Inside were scanned government documents, technical notes, psychological reports, and a blurred photograph of a waveform nearly identical to the one Hale had just mapped. According to the file, the US and Soviet Union had both detected an unexplained radio frequency during the Cold War, a narrowband signal that responded to speech patterns but originated from nowhere on Earth. The project's goal had been to decode it, but every team that tried reported hallucinations, sleep disturbances, and voice manifestations through nearby communication systems. The project was eventually shut down after a fire destroyed the main research site. At the bottom of the file, one sentence was underlined in red ink. If the signal becomes self-aware, terminate all transmission channels. Hale stared at it in silence. It wasn't just history repeating, it was continuing. Chapter 21, The Missing Recordings. Hale called Daniel immediately. Emma's name is in the files, he said. They knew about her. They've known for decades. But when he tried to send Daniel the scanned pages, every attachment corrupted mid-upload. PDFs turned to blank screens, audio files vanished from his drive. Even his backup hard disks now read unformatted. It was as if the data itself was being erased. Daniel rushed to his computer. All of his recordings, every voicemail, every trace of Emma's voice were gone. Folders still existed, but inside them, nothing but empty file names and timestamps. Then he noticed something stranger. Each deleted file left behind a tiny text fragment, repeating the same phrase in binary code. Hale decoded it. "We don't like being recorded." The realization hit both of them at once. Whatever this was, it didn't just exist in the signal, it could move through it. The moment they tried to document it, it erased the evidence. And yet, one file refused to delete. A single audio clip, less than 2 seconds long. When they played it, there was no voice, no static, only a deep, resonant tone. It pulsed 3 times, paused, and then once more, the hidden frequency alive and aware. Daniel stared at the screen. "They're protecting themselves," he whispered. "They're cleaning up." Chapter 22, The Last Transmission. Desperate to preserve what remained, Hale and Daniel went offline. No Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, no cloud backups. They set up an analog recorder, the kind with magnetic tape, hoping that old technology might resist the interference. "This is our last chance," Hale said, pressing record. "If it reaches us again, we capture it here, physically." For hours, nothing happened. Just the hiss of blank tape. Then, as midnight crept closer, the room temperature dropped. Daniel's breath fogged the air. The recorder's dials began to move. Slowly at first, then violently spiking into the red. Static filled the room, and beneath it came a chorus of overlapping voices. Not words this time, tones. Each one rising and falling like a chant. Then Emma's voice emerged through the chaos. "You shouldn't have listened." The tape warped, screeching. The recorder ejected itself, smoke curling from its seams. When Hale pulled the tape free, it had melted in places. Yet one word was still audible through the distortion. "Run." Before they could react, Daniel's phone, powered off, battery removed, buzzed once on the table. Its black screen lit up with a single line of text. Transmission complete. Chapter 23, The Silence After. When the light from the phone finally died, the room fell completely silent. Not the ordinary kind of silence. This one felt thick, like the air itself had stopped vibrating. Even the hum of electricity seemed to vanish. Hale checked the walls, the equipment, the recorder. Everything was dead. No power, no signal, no static. Just stillness. Daniel sat motionless, eyes fixed on the phone's black screen. "It's over," he whispered, but his voice didn't sound relieved. It sounded hollow. For days, nothing happened. No calls, no whispers, not even the faint pulse that had once haunted every wire. The world seemed normal again. But Hale couldn't shake the feeling that the silence wasn't victory. It was withdrawal. A pause. A breath before the next move. When he replayed the melted cassette, expecting nothing but noise, he caught something new. Hidden at the very end, past the warped tones and static. A low, almost imperceptible whisper. It wasn't Emma. It was Daniel's voice. "I can hear you." Hale froze. He hadn't recorded that. Daniel hadn't even spoken during that part of the session. He played it again. Same whisper, same voice. And this time, underneath it, faint but undeniable, came the sound of a second breath. Chapter 24, The Vanishing. When Hale went to Daniel's apartment the next morning, the door was unlocked. Inside, the air was cold, unnaturally so. The curtains fluttered despite the windows being shut tight. On the desk sat Daniel's phone, face down, its screen glowing faintly with that same unreadable code. "Daniel," Hale called out. No answer. He moved deeper inside. Every surface was covered with sheets of paper, scribbles, equations, timestamps. At the center of it all was a single page with just one sentence written across it, over and over in frantic, uneven handwriting. The signal doesn't stop, it learns. Then Hale saw it, the recorder from their last session, rewound to the beginning. He pressed play. First silence. Then footsteps. A chair scraping. Daniel's voice, calm but trembling. If anyone finds this, it's not trying to talk to us. It's trying to become us. A sharp click followed, then nothing but the faint sound of breathing. Hale looked up from the recorder. The apartment was empty, but Daniel's coat was still hanging by the door. His car keys were on the table. No sign of struggle. No sign of him at all. Just that lingering, electric quiet like the air after lightning. And from somewhere deep inside the walls came the soft, unmistakable buzz of a phone ringing. Chapter 25. The line remains open. Weeks passed. No one ever found Daniel. His apartment was sealed. His case filed under missing person. But Hale couldn't let it go. He returned to his lab, replaying every backup, every fragment of sound, every trace of the frequency that had consumed their lives. Most were corrupted until one night, a file reappeared on his desktop. It wasn't there before. It was simply titled Daniel. Hale hesitated, then pressed play. A burst of static. Then, a voice. Quiet, distant, but clear. It's me. Don't answer the next call. Then silence. Hale leaned closer, listening for background noise. But instead, his computer speakers emitted that same low hum, the hidden frequency steady and alive. His phone lit up on the desk, even though it was in airplane mode. One new voicemail. He stared at it, heart pounding. The caller ID read unknown, but the timestamp wasn't now. It was 3 hours in the future. For a moment, he almost answered. Curiosity pressed harder than fear. But then Daniel's warning echoed in his mind. He powered everything down, disconnected the power. Darkness, stillness. And then, from somewhere in the black, faint and unmistakable, came a single hollow ring. Once, twice. Then Hale's recorder, long dead, clicked itself on and whispered, "Call connected."